certainly not death or taxes. It's uncertainty. See, standing here now, you cannot be certain of anything in the future except the fact that you're not certain. And the funny part is that uncertainty, the only thing we can be sure of, is also our most universal fear. We are afraid of not knowing. Right? Studies have shown this. Fear of the unknown is the bedrock of all fears. Being uncertain about losing your job has been proven to be more stressful than actually losing your job. If I tell you I'm going to give you an electric shock, you will feel less pain than if I tell you I might give you one. And probably one of the most startling studies, they did a study of cancer patients, women who had breast cancer, and found out that of the women who had breast cancer, they were more upset and stressed before they got their results than after they found out that they actually had cancer. Because human beings, we are knowing machines. We can't know, yet we're terrified of not knowing. After 6 weeks in hospital, they said I had to go home, but I was terrified. I couldn't leave. My mother asked me, what if your daughter needs you someday? And this is where new thinking began to kick in. I thought, my daughter might need me. She might. She might not. There was no way to predict it. And because there was no way to predict it at all, I was neither certain nor uncertain. And my life really began to change in that instant because I realized that as much as certainty is an opinion, uncertainty is too. See, there's no such thing in nature as uncertainty. If you look around you, you see things, right? A book or a pen or a computer or a dog or a tree. Uncertainty is not like those things. You can't see, touch, smell, taste uncertainty. Pens or trees don't fear uncertainty. They don't even feel it. See, the truth is this: the world is no more uncertain now than it has ever been. COVID doesn't make it more uncertain. The questions you have in your head don't make it more uncertain. The world is no more uncertain now than it's ever been. How could it be? A book is a book. A tree is a tree. The world can never be uncertain. Only we can be. After I left the hospital, I actually moved to Cape Town, lived by the beach for a year. I spent months staring at the waves, trying to figure out the future, until I realized this. I'm human. I feel uncertain. And thank goodness. Because certainty is its own form of death. We won't fix what isn't broke, right? Uncertainty is freedom. Because uncertainty is the source of curiosity, of speculation, and so of creativity. Pens are not uncertain, and they're also not creative until we pick them up and use them. See, the ocean wasn't going to give me an answer, and neither was my notebook. I needed to create it myself. And it was clear the answer for me was my daughter. I did not know if she would see me then or ever, really. I was completely uncertain. And it was good. So I packed up my old Hyundai Tucson and set out back to Josie, and the amazing thing was everything I had in Cape Town fit. Exactly. Now, in the 5 years since, I've learned to dance with uncertainty, to use it as the source of creative genius, not just for myself, but for everyone I train and coach. And today, we're going to begin this conversation by talking about uncertainty as we've done. But from here, we're going to get into a question, which is this: why am I even talking about uncertainty at the beginning of a talk about creativity for leaders? And now my experience on Teams as opposed to Zoom is a little bit different, which is that most people aren't on camera. Hard to see people. So here's what I'm going to ask us to do. I'm going to ask you, number one, to take your camera, turn it on, and show me right now on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 to 100. What level of uncertainty are you experiencing in your work right now? Okay. Repetsoir, 100%. Like you have no idea, Repetsoir, what's going on. 100%. Lisa, 0. Right. 0, 100. So a lot of people are like halfway uncertain, right? A lot of people, few people at like really uncertain, some people not bothered. Lisa, you're not bothered at all. It's fantastic. So here's the thing, guys. Do you get what I'm talking about in that story? And it's a true story. Do you get what I'm talking about? See, we all fear uncertainty. It is the biggest fear we have. And it's ironic for two reasons, right? One is it doesn't actually exist. We literally fear it more than anything, and then we make it up. And
Michael?
Yeah.
Bongi's got her hand up.
Okay, I can't see that, but that's great. Bongi, did you want to say something? Colleen?
Bongi, are you on mute?
Let me just finish the thought while we wait for Bongi. So two things really important to start this conversation off. One, uncertainty doesn't exist except in our heads. And yet, even though it's our biggest fear as human beings, proven to be that, we create it all the time. Weird, right? Second important thing to realize, it's actually good that we create it, because if we overcome the fear of it, it is the source of creativity. And if you as a leader in business start to become comfortable with uncertainty, you start to become more creative already. It's like an automatic thing. So one of the questions on the survey was learn how to overcome uncertainty. We're not going to do that today. We're going to learn how to embrace it. We're going to learn why we should embrace it and how it can help in a lot of ways. Is Bongi still?
No, she said it was a mistake, Michael, so carry on, thanks.
No worries. Okay, so here's what I'd like to share with you about why creativity matters. And a lot of you being here today probably already know why it matters. But just in case you don't, LinkedIn has published this quote about 2.5 years ago already, that the most important investment in business today is creativity, right? Forbes magazine said this, that creativity is the skill of the future. And perhaps most important for this conversation today is this quote from IBM, that creativity is the most important leadership aptitude. And this was 10 years ago that IBM said this. There's a lot of other quotes. Colleen, can you go ahead and put up the slide that has all the pictures of the quotes?
Sure, just let me get it up again.
Yeah, there we go. So there's a lot of other quotes about this. Dr. Firestein there on the right says that in all his years, there's never been a time when creativity was needed more. And the World Economic Forum, you'll see on the bottom there, saying that 5 of the top 10 skills are creative thinking skills that are in their future of work report. It's actually 7 now. And if you go to the next slide, Colleen, this is some really interesting stuff around business. Colleen, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. Okay, so this was a study by McKinsey just last year, right? Only last year this was done. And McKinsey said basically that this was while COVID is happening, that 84% of executives were saying that innovation is important, and 80% felt their business models at risk because of COVID. Only 6% are happy with innovation and performance of innovation, right? And only 21% feel that they're poised to capture the opportunities COVID has created. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, this is a specific study for South Africa that Accenture did, and it states that although 85% of South African businesses are vulnerable to disruption, only 50% are prepared for it, right? We went ahead a little bit, but while we're here, what's happening? Is it running by itself now?
Yeah, it is.
What's happening? Go back to the previous one. I wasn't going to get to this yet, but I'll just do this really quickly. Okay, let me get out of the way who I am. I wasn't going to do this till much later, but since you're here, you can probably hear from my accent that I am not originally from Teams. I actually live in Randburg. I'm not living inside this machine. But also you probably hear from my accent that I'm not originally from South Africa either. I am a South African citizen. I'm a dual citizen. I'm an African American. So anyway, I went to Stanford University many, many years ago, so many years that I will not possibly tell you. I'm not yet eligible for a vaccine in South Africa. That's all I'll tell you about my age. I worked in the film and TV industry since I graduated. I was working for Castle Rock Pictures, which is Rob Reiner's company, and quite a nice company to work for. But then I ran away after going to law school, decided not to be responsible or professional at all, went to Prague and became a literary editor, published a magazine called Traffico, which was represented by a goose wearing a crown. So you can see it was a big shift. Anyway, after 7 years in Prague, I lived in New York for a while in the film industry, and then finally came to South Africa. I've been here for 18 years. I've won my TV shows. Have won 5 SAFTAs, which are South African Film and TV Awards. I've taught at or created actually the Academy of Television and Screen Arts, and taught creativity there as well, on top of running the whole school for a little while. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Marketing for a company called Innovation Minds in Silicon Valley. But mainly I also train, teach, and basically facilitate, coach, and so on in the area of creative thinking and innovation, which Colleen, I will put a background up for. So this is the course that we mainly do. It's called the Innovation Explosion. It is done either as an 8-week training over short amounts of time as a micro-learning technique, or it's done in a 3-day sort of much higher pressure environment with teams in business. Currently, we're running this with a bunch of young entrepreneurs through Constitution Hill and the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller in Gauteng. We're running this for 100 young entrepreneurs, but in segments of 25. And I'm going to be starting to do this as well with another group of young people through an NGO that is nationwide. But it is designed as something that can work either for individuals or teams to raise their creative standards and abilities and mindset. It's very much based on mindset, as you'll see throughout this. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, just so you see that I do have an idea what I'm talking about. This is what we really pride ourselves on, which is we train and certify creativity coaches. Primarily people who are already coaches, but also people who are not. So, Colleen, you can take off the slide about me. I've talked about me enough. I now want to ask people to turn their cameras on and show us an object that you have grabbed from near you. Any object that you've grabbed from near you. I want to just make a demonstration of something for you to see. Okay, Karen, thank you, but I have no idea what that is. What is that?
It's a notebook.
It's a notebook. Okay. Karen, what's another thing you could do with a notebook besides things you've ever done with a notebook?
I can swat a fly.
You can. You've never swatted a fly with a notebook?
No, but I can.
Okay, fantastic. Paul, is that it? What is that?
That's a stone from the Drakensberg.
It's a stone from the Drakensberg. Fantastic. What can you do with
From a river in the Berg. Yeah.
from a river? That's a river stone. Fantastic.
Yeah.
What can you do with that you've never done with a stone before?
Use it as a hammer, which is a lie. I have used a stone as a hammer before.
Stop lying, Paul.
I can use it to roll bread, a rolling pin.
You can use it to roll bread. What can you use a notebook for that you've never used a notebook for before?
A makeshift telescope.
Ah, okay, cool. Kobus, Stassen, what is that? Thank you, Paul.
Hi guys, this is a cube. It's a puzzle cube actually built out of 6 sides, and it's a desktop sort of pen holder where you can put your utensils in.
Very cool. Kobus, what can you do with a stone that you've never done before?
A stone.
River stone. Yeah.
Maybe turn it into some sort of art. Maybe you could stack it or paint it or use it as decorative purposes. I haven't done that.
You could. You absolutely could. What can you do with your puzzle cube that you wouldn't normally do? That's pretty tough because it's got a lot of uses, right?
Yeah. I just fiddle with it. Feeling the material, it's pretty soft and spongy. Maybe I could use that as a filler or as a placemat or some sort of absorbing device.
A placemat? Does it open up like that?
Yeah, it can.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, cool.
And now I can rebuild it.
Oh, you picked a good one. All right. Thank you, Kobus. Carrie, was that a tile? What is that? Carrie, you're on mute.
It's a coaster to put your
Coaster.
mug on.
Okay, cool. What can you do with a puzzle cube besides what Kobus already said?
Well, you can use those pieces as coasters.
There we go. Now that's interesting, right? She's got a coaster, Kobus, and it turns out that you can use your thing as a coaster. Now, Carrie, what can you use your coaster for?
As a fan.
Could do that. And Anne likes that so much that
menopause isn't your friend.
And Anne likes that so much, I'm going to her next. Anne, what do you got for us?
Is it
I think it's Anine.
Anine?
Anine, sorry. Anine.
No, it's fine. Anne is my second name, so that works too.
Your name is Anine Anne?
Yeah, Anine and Beatrice, actually.
Wow.
Both
Okay.
grandmothers.
That's
I was
cool.
the last granddaughter, so they wanted to make sure that everyone was represented.
That's super cool.
So this is my knitting that I knit on during meetings, and now the secret is out. My colleagues now know that on our Teams calls I actually knit.
Yeah, 72%, I think the measure is right now, of people on Teams do other things besides be in the meetings they're in. So don't worry about it. What can you do with the knitting besides knit?
Sure, I could. I think I could use the string to make jewelry, or do something with my hair with it. So kind of hair accessories.
You could. What can you do with a stone?
With a stone, I think it would be a nice toy for my nephew. Just kind of like we could use just to test his imagination, and we would have different characters and get a few stones and create a little village.
Okay, sounds like you're more interested in that than your nephew.
Can you tell I'm the favorite aunt?
I can tell very quickly, yeah. Your Auntie Anine Anne.
That's right.
That's pretty cool. So let's thank you, Anne. let's move to one more person, and then what I'm going to ask you to do is type in the chat. I'm just curious what Simon has there. So I'm going to go to Simon. Then if you didn't get a chance, I'm sorry, we can't do everybody, but type in the chat an object you have, what you can do with it besides what's obvious, and pick one object you've seen so far or an object someone's typed in the chat and add what you can do with that. But while we do that, Simon, what is that you have there? I can't tell. It looks unusual though.
This is a cloth nappy for my newborn.
It's a clean nappy.
A clean cloth diaper, yeah.
Thank you for having a
Reusable.
clean nappy. That's kind of you. What can you do with that besides put it on your baby? And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. There's an insert inside, and I think I could use this to wipe up spills.
You
clean one,
could.
of course.
You could. What else could you do that would be more exciting or interesting than wiping up stuff?
I don't know. Use it as a bandage, maybe.
You could. I'd like to see you wear it as a hat for a moment since it's clean. But anyway, we probably won't get that to happen on this call. Oh, have you frozen? Simon? Okay. I think Simon froze. Anyway, thank you, Simon, for that and for sharing again, congratulations about your child. Now, why did I ask you guys to do this silly exercise? Anybody? Anybody?
To test how
Anybody?
creative we are.
Well, I'm not testing you, right? Although, did anybody here do the creativity test that Colleen sent out?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's great. So one, Lisa says to get your creative juices flowing. Absolutely. Definitely. But why this question? The answer is because most people think of the same thing the same way all the time, right? If you pick up, now Corbus had this special puzzle thing, which is designed to be like flexible and stuff, right? But most objects are used for pretty much one thing. A diaper, a nappy, it's used for nappy stuff, right? The more we think about how can we use stuff in a different way, it is in fact a way to get the juices flowing. It's also a great way to get people to turn their cameras on. So that, and also what Charnay's just said, how you can inspire others, right, is also true. We're interacting and getting to see what other people think. All of this is important. Why? Well, I've told you why creativity is super important for you as business leaders, right? Here's the problem. There was a study done already many years ago by a guy named George Land, who was working for NASA in America, working as a creativity trainer and coach for their scientists and engineers. And George Land discovered something pretty striking. He decided, he felt like people struggle with being creative, right? Here's a question for you. While I tell you this story, type in the chat on a level from 1 to 10, with 1 being like really stupid and 10 being a genius, what level of creativity do you feel you have right now in your life? 1 to 10. Just type that in the chat. Okay, and what's always great about this is we get to see the numbers ranging from all over the place, right? So Gisella's broken us in with a big 8, right? So what you tend to get here is 4s, 5s, and 6s. If you're above 6, you're doing really well. If you're below 4, then you're struggling. If you're at a 4 or even a 3, you're kind of average. Adobe does a thing called the State of Create survey every 5 years or 4 years, and they average a 4. The average person in the world who uses Adobe, which is a creative software, averages a 4. So generally people don't feel they're as creative as the average person, and even creative people don't feel that way. So don't feel bad about it if you've got a 4 or 5 or 6. A lot of you guys have 7s and 8s, so congratulations, right? The truth is this, though. This is the results of the survey that George Land did. Let me show you those. So George Land found that He went and surveyed a bunch of 5-year-old children, right? Does anybody want to guess? And you can even open your mic and guess, or you can type in the chat. What percent of 5-year-olds scored as creative geniuses? 5-year-old children. Okay, Vashti says 80%. Somebody said something. What was that?
I said 100%.
Very close. A lot of 80s going in there. A lot of 80s and 75s. 100 is very close. The answer is 98. It's almost 100, right? It's 100 on a level of error of whatever. So there's this was supposed to be a slide we put in the thing, but my thing's not working. So this represents the number of 5-year-old children who are creative geniuses. Now he went back and did the same survey with the same children at the age of 10. Anybody want to guess how many 10-year-olds of the same children remained as creative geniuses? Okay, 50%, Vashti says, 65, 40, 40, 40. Okay, the answer is 30.
10? Oh, okay.
10 is very, 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 very close to the next question, which is 15 years old. Same kids at the age of 15, 12%. 12% remained as creative geniuses. Started at 98%. By the age of 15, same kids, 12%. Now, here's the really disgusting part. He then decided to survey not the same people, 280,000 adults, people over the age of 20. Anybody want to guess what percent of adults remain creative geniuses? Carla says 1. Kelly says 5. Okay, Carla, you're half right. Devesh, you're half right. Kerry, you're the winner. Normally on things like this, I give a prize for this question, but I have nothing to give away today, so I didn't give anything away today yet. But the answer is 2%, right? 2% of adults remain at the creative level of when we were 5. Now that means you. That means you, right? You have gone from a 5-year-old who was there at the top, all the way down to here. Only a very limited selection of people, only 2%, which means on this call about 2 people. On this call, there's about 2 creative geniuses probably, and the rest of us are all right. Now, why is that? A lot of it has to do with the conversation I started with about uncertainty. Because we are not comfortable with uncertainty as adults. Children, oddly enough, although they don't like the feeling of insecurity, they don't invent uncertainty as a scary or negative thing, right? Most of you, or a lot of you, I'm sure, have children or have had children. And you know that when they're, when they cry or they're upset, it's because they are literally feeling bad about something in that moment. They might be fearing something at that moment, but they're not worried about the future, right? A 5-year-old does not make a drawing and then stare at it wondering what people will think of it, do they? Please raise your hand if you have ever seen a 5-year-old ponder their drawing and wonder if their colleagues or friends will make fun of them about that drawing. We don't even start to worry about really being made fun of and stuff until a little bit later, right? But the bottom line of it is this. As Madesh says, we are scared as adults to do anything forward, not just to fail forward, to succeed forward, to fail forward. Like, we're just scared of what might happen, right? And it is our biggest fear. So why is that? I want to go into a little bit of creative theory, right? Not just to make it, too technical, but just to get into a little bit of the background of why you should care about creativity as leaders, because it is so important and yet it's so missing, right? And here is the beginning of why that is, right? There is basically 3. There it is. Okay, good. there's basically three things that we want to deal with around creativity in your business, right? One is people, right? The second so one is people. The second is basically the whole thing around the people, and then finally the systems. Today, we're not going to talk about any of the last two. We're just going to talk about people. Because here's the problem with innovation in most organizations is that until you sort out the fact that 98% of the people in the organization have lost access to the creativity that they're born with, it's going to be really hard to put processes in place or systems in place or make teams more innovative until you deal with the individuals and the teams, right? That's the biggest problem. Once you deal with that, then the systems can make a difference. And the big problem there is this, right? There are three factors that limit our creativity very, very clearly. One is school. We all know this. The second is society, and the third is the self. Now, I'm going to come back to this because first I want to ask you guys, what would you define the word creativity to even mean? If I asked you, what is creativity? What would you say it is? You can type that in the chat or you can speak up, whatever suits you. What is creativity? What is it? Okay, Eunice says it's to invent. And there's probably no wrong answers here, right? Oh, except that one. We'll get to that one. George, we're going to get to thinking outside the box. Freedom of expression, yeah. Imagination. A lot of imagination. Look at that. Okay, we got two outside the boxes. We got a lot of imaginations. Innovation. It's very similar to innovation. Making something of nothing, freedom. So a lot of good words here, right? So here's what creativity is defined as in Wikipedia. In Wikipedia, creativity is defined, if I can find this background, if not, I'm just going to tell you what it says. No, that's mine. Okay, hold on. That's not it either. One more try. That's still not it. Okay, here it is. Wikipedia says that creativity is something new, original, and valuable. That's what Wikipedia says creativity is. Right? It defines it this way. It's creating something that is new, original, and valuable. Now, I hate this definition, right? New, yeah, I guess. Valuable, to who? Original. Let's have a look at original. It's a fun one to kill very quickly. How many people here are concerned with I'm not original enough, or you feel like at work you're not original enough with your ideas, or your team isn't original enough, any of that stuff? Like raise your hand or type yes in the chat if you feel that way. Type no in the chat if you think it's not a problem being original. So type yes in the chat if originality is a problem. Type no in the chat if it's not a problem. And then, Colleen, if you could put up the slides, I'm going to guide you to the fun conversation that is going to be about to happen here. So those of you who are saying no, originality is not a problem, that's good. Colleen, are you putting up the slides?
Yeah, I'm just busy. I'm trying to get rid of all the chat box so I can find the slides. Just give me a second.
Okay. No problem. So, I do apologize, guys, for I don't know why Teams does not want me to share my own screen, but Colleen is being noble and running this for me. So keep typing in the chat, yes, if originality is something you're trying to get sorted out, and no, if it's not. Almost there. Terrific. So just zip forward. Skip me. We've talked about me. By now, if people don't get that I'm really important and impressive. That's my book, by the way. Okay, there we go, right there. So this is a very famous quote from Pablo Picasso. The bad artists imitate, the great artists steal. Anybody here ever heard this quote before? Say yes in the chat or raise your hand if you've heard this quote before. If we have a room of 100 people who've never heard this quote before, I promise you, you will never, ever, ever forget it. Okay, so one person has heard it before. You will never forget it after today, and here's why. You may notice that on this slide, Banksy has appropriated this quote about artists stealing by scratching off Picasso's name and writing Banksy. Now, those of you who know who Banksy is know that, you know, he's a bit of a extreme thinker in art, right? He recently, last year, I think, or 2 years ago, he shredded a piece that he just sold for millions of dollars. Basically, you know, he does weird things. So in his exhibition about 10 years ago, he had this stone made and took Picasso's name, put his own there. But here's the thing. It's not really clear if Picasso actually said this. Because, next slide. Colleen? Okay. Stravinsky said, a good composer does not imitate, he steals. Stravinsky, by the way, a very close friend of Picasso's. But he also apparently said this. Next slide. Lesser artists borrow, great artists steal, which is slightly different. But next slide. It was actually T.S. Eliot who wrote, before Picasso, immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. This was actually written in a journal. So this came before Picasso said what he said. And then we have these. Go ahead and go through, Colleen, a little bit faster. Dali said, those who don't want to imitate. David Bowie says, the only art I'll study is stuff I steal from. Quentin Tarantino says he steals from every movie. Woody Guthrie steals from the best. Paul Mooney steals his jokes. Woody Allen steals from everybody. And as Albert Einstein says, the secret to creativity is actually knowing how to hide your sources. Now, what I'm not saying here that, you know, you should cheat and steal from people. The point is, Picasso became super famous for Cubism, which was basically him taking African art and European art and putting them into one form, right? He took European notions of perspective and connected it to African notions of non-perspective and created Cubism. His point in the quote he said was basically that if you, great artists draw from each other, and it applies to every level, not just art itself as you think of art. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He improved the light bulb. He marketed the light bulb. He made a marketable light bulb. He didn't invent the film camera or the projector. But all of those things are inventions he was credited with. Marconi didn't invent the radio. All the people we know as the inventors of the things that we know didn't invent those things. They took them and developed them to a point where that thing was able to be used commercially or viably, right? Colleen, you can shut off the share. Thank you. We're going to come to this next, so keep that up, but off screen. We're going to come back to it. So the point is this, which is really interesting. It turns out that that quote that Picasso said has absolutely zero historical proof. And it appears it was made up by Steve Jobs. In an interview he did in the 1980s about Apple and the genius of Apple, he quoted Picasso as saying that, you know, that great artists steal. And he said that to justify the fact that Apple had stolen the mouse, stolen the graphic user interface, and basically stolen everything Apple did. Now, again, they didn't steal it. They just drew from someone else's ideas and made it better. Xerox had a mouse. They were the first company to have a mouse. They didn't get it right. It didn't work. It broke a lot. It was clunky. People didn't like using it. They never managed to market it. Apple visited Xerox many years before they launched their mouse, and they finally launched a mouse that we today know as a mouse. It was the first mouse that was usable for consumers. So it seems that Steve Jobs stole a quote from Picasso about stealing things that Picasso never actually said, so that Banksy could many years later steal it from Picasso, right? not long after Jobs made it up in the first place. So the point of all that is this: there is nothing original. If you believe there is an original invention in the history of humanity that you can prove came out of nowhere and no one before that person thought of something similar, please type that in the chat or raise your hand and speak up, because so far in my years of studying creativity, I've yet to come across one. Velcro is a zipper mixed with that stuff in the field that sticks to your clothes. That's literally how Velcro got invented. An alarm clock is a clock with a bell on it, right? The printing press was a coin punch and a wine press put together, right? Sorry, a coin press and a wine opener put together. So they used to make coins with part of it. They used to open wine with part of it. They put it together and made a printing press. That's how the first printing press was created. There is nothing original. So this should be good, right? Creativity should be easy. You don't have to come up with new ideas. You just have to draw from the ideas that have come before. Shoelace is just a rope, isn't it? It's a rope made smaller with little plastic things on the end. So the point is this: creativity is really easy. Creativity comes to us naturally. We're born creative. At the age of 5, we're all creative. What happens? Well, let's have a look at this, because this is really important. This is where you can start to make a difference in your own life and the life of the people around you, because this is how I define creativity, right? Creativity is the ability to think differently from yourself. We often think creativity is the ability to think differently than other people. But actually, if you look at people like Picasso, say, or great creative people who you might admire, whoever that is, and here's another question that you might want to share. Type in the chat a couple of people you admire as creative thinkers. But if you look at those people, you'll find that they changed and shifted who they were over and over again, right? Creativity is the ability to think differently from yourself. And by the way, a couple of you, Richard Branson, right? How many different things has he made? So many different things. Lady Gaga, you know, goes from wearing a meat dress to doing that romantic movie with that guy. Wow, can't think of the name of the movie, but you know, say very, very diverse shifts, right, by very creative people. So Bradley Cooper, thank you. Hey, got a better memory than me. So one other thing to note that's really important, because this is also very, very misunderstood, is that, sorry, it's this one here. No, it's not that one either. Never mind. What I want to point out is that creativity and innovation are very closely tied together. A lot of people think that innovation is some kind of special thing, that you have to be a specific type of person to get done. You have to work in a certain department, and it's usually around technology. But innovation and creativity are almost the same thing. Creativity is simply thinking, and innovation is simply acting, right? Creativity is thinking, innovating is acting. Same process happens in it. But how many of you have had an experience like this? This experience of creative thinking, how many of you had an experience like that? In other words, you start at the beginning, you go through a whole bunch of flip-flops and confusion and everything else, and you finally get to the end. And at the end, kind of makes sense. Whether this is individually or whether this is part of a team that you're working with together, how many of you had experience like this? Sounds about right. Okay. So here's the weird thing, guys. This is not how your brain works. It's not how creativity works. Creativity works a lot more like this. Okay? There's 3 steps to it. You take stuff in, you think about it, and you put stuff out. Now, sometimes the stuff you put out goes back to the beginning again, right? And you think about it again. That's literally how it happens. You cannot do it any other way. So why, if it's supposed to look like that, does it actually end up looking so much like that so much of the time? Any guesses? Any ideas? Can't see the background. Okay. Oh, okay. On my screen, it doesn't seem I'm in front of it, but. Okay. We overthink things. We overthink things and self-doubt. Very, very good responses, right? This is the way our mind is supposed to work. And here's the thing. A 5-year-old's mind works like this. They take stuff in, they think about it, and they spit it out, right? We think about it a lot, and we spend a lot of time at the beginning there in the taking stuff in part with filters, right? You guys all know that you have filters on your perception. Anybody here have the illusion that you see things the way they are? Waiting. None of us see things the way they are, right? We see things the way that we've learned to see them. On the other hand, at the other end, at the expressing part, we express things through a filter as well, don't we? The way we talk, the way we write, the way we think about stuff after we've processed it. And here's the worst part. Ideas only come from the subconscious. The conscious and subconscious minds need to be working together to be creative. That first part where we do, the taking information in, and the last part where we express information back out after we have new ideas. Those two sections of this process involve a lot of conscious mind, right? We have to process things, we have to think about them, we have to put them into order. Once we come up with ideas, we have to decide on which ideas to use and how to use them. But that middle part, the generation of actual ideas, is only subconscious. You cannot have a new idea by thinking. It's literally physically impossible. You might think beforehand. You do think beforehand. But you'll notice that a lot of the best ideas in your life and in the life of, historically that you've heard of, often come when you're not thinking about stuff at all, right? Anybody ever get good ideas when you're walking through the woods or taking a shower or swimming in the pool? So if you are, and don't worry guys, you know what, I'll provide, after the thing, I'll provide you this diagram, or I'll find a way to get this to you. And there's other things I can offer to you yet. I'm sorry if this isn't working in the background too well. But the point of this is really simple. It's a 3-step process. You take stuff in, you think about it, you spit it out. The middle step, the really important thing about the middle step is that the middle step is the ideation process is not conscious. It is subconscious. The work you do in the beginning will create the opportunity to have subconscious ideas. And the work you do at the end will give you the opportunity to express the ideas you've had or deciding which ones to use. The biggest problem we have, besides the fact that as adults we have filters in the beginning and the end, is that we don't give ourselves the space to have ideas. One of you said the problem is we think too much, right? We overthink. Once you put stuff in place, the most important thing you can do as a person being creative is to give it space to let it be. And we don't do that as adults. And that's the number one reason why adults have lost our creativity. The second thing we don't do as leaders is give the people in our teams the chance to actually think. How many of you are either in a team or responsible for a team? Type yes in the chat if you're, do this. Type in the chat, leader if you're a leader of a team, or in a team if you're in a team. Just type that in, because then I want to ask you guys a question. Very, very important question. Okay. In that team, either whether you're a leader of that team or whether you're in that team, are you providing or are you provided at least half an hour a day, or say 2 or 3 hours in a week, where you are expected to not do any work? And you're expected to just sit and let ideas come up. Anybody have that opportunity as part of your team? So far, no. We're waiting for a yes. See, most people start brainstorms by sitting down, right, and saying, let's come up with some ideas. You don't do the first part of doing the conscious work up front, and then you want people to, come up with ideas consciously. Doesn't work. You need to do the conscious work together, and that's great, Sharni, that you create it for yourself, and an hour of me time that's not targeted at work. I'm not talking about me time, okay? I'm talking about company time. If you want more creativity in your company, do what creative companies do. Provide opportunities for people to be creative, which means giving people time to do nothing as part of your job. But even then, we have a problem. And the problem is this, and it relates to the idea of thinking out of the box. A few of you have already said you'd love to learn more about thinking out of the box, or that that's what creativity is. In fact, creativity is only thinking out of the box if you define out of the box to mean like out of the box of your company, how it normally thinks, or out of the box of how other people think. But if you're talking about you, then please don't try to think out of the box, because it will do you no good. Donovan, very good point. Ideas arise when you're lying in bed, not trying to have them. Ideas only arise when you're not trying to have them. Think about it. Think about all the times you've tried to have ideas and tried really hard and you get stuck. Things like writer's block or creative blocks don't actually exist. They're simply what you call it when you try too hard to have ideas in the wrong way, right? Now, here's the really important thing, guys. Don't try to think out of the box if the box is you, because you cannot, right? Every single animal alive that has a brain thinks into boxes. If you don't believe me, think about a lizard. A lizard thinks in like a very small number of boxes. Can I eat this? Or will it eat me? Right? It puts that, the second it perceives something, it puts that into a box. My dog, Lance, who you'll meet someday on my YouTube stuff if you ever watch that, you know, he has more boxes, right? He has a box called, does this person love me? Should I be loyal to this? He makes decisions. But now here's the problem with us as human beings, right? The problem with us as human beings is we have a lot of boxes, right? And if you don't believe me, if you're disagreeing with me, anybody here disagreeing with me that we don't always think into boxes immediately all the time? Anybody here disagree? Raise your hand or just type yes, you disagree. Do you agree? Type yes if you agree, or just write agree, disagree, right? The point is this. If you agree, you're thinking into a box. And that's okay, because you're agreeing that you're thinking into a box. If you disagree, you're thinking into a box. So, Sharni, you slightly disagree. That's a box. Question, Sharni, how many times today have you made a judgment about something? Including my American accent, my color of my skin, what I'm wearing, who else is on this call, stuff happening to you around you on this call. And I mean, that's in the last hour, right? And that's a great comment that just got made. The pressure to think outside the box, right? Don't try to think outside the box. Again, if you define the box as the way my company normally does things, or the way that other people do things, fine. But that's just making up language. What you want to really get here, because this is really critically important to help you be more creative instantly, is that you are made of boxes. Everything in your head that happens is a box that you file things into. Is it good or bad? Is it right or wrong? Is this guy good or not? Do I trust this guy or not? Do I trust this, person I work for or not? Do I like this job or not? Do I want to work for that company or this company? All of this is happening to you. How many times today? Type in the chat how many times today you think you've made a judgment about something. I'll give you a hint. If it's less than 1,000 and you've been up for 3 to 4 hours, you're off. We have nearly 1,000 judgments an hour that we make as human beings. At least, right? Unless we're sleeping. So we are machines to make judgments and put things in boxes. That's what we do all the time. We can't help it. It's how we survive. In fact, that's the whole uncertainty question that I started with, right? We don't like uncertainty because we want to put things in boxes because it tells us not only what the world is like, but who we are. And that's the thing. The more boxes we are certain about, the more we know who we are. And then we feel good about ourselves. And then we feel great that we are that way. But the problem is, the more we are certain about who we are, the less creative we become. Because we know the answer to everything. We know all the judgments to make. Curiosity is active uncertainty. Curiosity is actually going beyond, right, the question, having an answer, and actually saying, maybe there's more than that answer. Most of us, most of the time, want the answer, and once we get the answer, we're satisfied. But there might be a better answer. Thomas Edison famously took 10,000 experiments to make a light bulb that worked, that he could sell. He famously said, and he might have been lying, that he never got discouraged, that he saw it as 10,000 successful experiments in how not to make a light bulb. So he was curious, at least he claimed he was. He was able to say, no matter what happens next, I'm able to say, there's another answer. But most of us don't have that comfort. It's because of this. So yeah, school limits us, right? Society limits us and tells us we should be a certain way. But even when those things don't limit us, it's this, it's ourselves. It's yourself that is your biggest limit on your creativity. It doesn't matter who your boss is. It doesn't matter who you work for. It doesn't matter what the company rules are. You are very unlikely to shift yourself. And if you're a very creative person that gave yourself an 8 at the beginning of these questions, you're probably you're probably afraid to shift that being because you're happy with it, right? So the critical thing is to start to get this. Think into the box. There's a very famous case study on this done by Bic. Everybody here know what Bic was famous for originally? Pens, thank you, Lee. So Bic made pens for many years. And Bic started by making pens that were very expensive and normal kind of, pens. But then they discovered the cheap plastic disposable pen. And the cheap plastic disposable pen was not an invention that Bic made. They did not invent that. They found it. They decided to use that. They became the famous people worldwide for it. And between the 1950s and 60s, they went from being a small company in France to spreading throughout the world, literally into every market in the world. By the early 1970s, they no longer had anywhere to expand to. And people didn't need more pens than they had, right? Yes, they're disposable, so the market was continually existing, but it wasn't growing. So Bic sat down and said, how can we grow? And they spent a lot of money and time doing this, but what they didn't do was think outside the box. They thought into the box. And there's a famous case study around this. Who knows what Bic makes today? So you see this, the pens, right? They do make lighters. They do make lighters. What else do they make? They also make razors, right? And I'm going to duck out of the way of this so you can see it. Bic makes primarily three things today: pens, lighters, and razors. And the thing is this, all of them are plastic, disposable, and cheap. You cannot put a new blade on a Bic razor. You cannot fill a Bic lighter. It is designed to use up and throw away. Now, not the smartest thing in today's world and ecology and stuff, but smart in the 1973 when they did this, because they didn't try to think out of the box. They just made their box bigger. That's how companies have applied this kind of thinking, right? Today, Bic sells 1/3 of each of these items, almost equally. They also make plastic disposable surfboards, which is weird. But the point is this: we as humans are a lot less flexible, let's say, than companies in a weird way, and a lot more flexible. So in a certain way, we are less flexible in the sense that it's harder for us to see outside of ourselves. But obviously, we have the ability and right to shift ourselves much more easily than the organization we're in, right? Because an organization has rules and things written down and policies and things that take sometimes years to fix. But the bottom line is this: as human beings, we cannot think out of the box. We will think into boxes. The solution to become more creative quickly is to actually start to transform the box that you think into. Make it larger. Bring in new examples into your box. Do what Bic did. Find a way to expand that box or bring new things into it. So that's very theoretical, but it's also very practical in the sense that the first step you need to take is to start to realize that the limits you have are also the key to expanding your creativity, right? Now, does anybody at this point doubt that the human compulsion to come up with judgments and decisions quickly and not be uncertain, does anybody doubt that? Does anybody think you can overcome that easily? Again, type yes in the chat if you think you can overcome it easily. Type no if you don't think you can overcome it easily. I'm hoping for at least one yes. Just somebody type yes for fun. There we go. Thank you, Gideon. So I'm going to ask you guys to do this quick puzzle. Which of these do not belong? Type in the chat which of these do not belong. Watch this, guys. Oh, you are all good children. Not even one answer other than D so far. Okay, so the most common answer in the world is D. And thank you very much. D is, in fact, a consonant. Now, Bears, why do you say I? Bears, why do you say I? Bears, Carrie, Sean all said I. Why? One of you guys, why?
I think whoever's trying to respond is on mute. So if you want to mute yourself and just.
Okay, well, Carrie typed in the chat. It didn't have a curve. Sean's typed in the chat. The letter doesn't have an inner space. So those are great answers, right? And as somebody already said, the answer D is the common answer that most people in the world give, at least 80%. Reason being, of course, that D is a consonant. So do you want to know the right answer? See, that's the right answer. All of them don't belong with each other. In other words, there is actually an infinite number of explanations for why A doesn't belong with the others, why D doesn't belong with the others, and so forth, right? All the explanations you gave are totally valid. And you could give almost any explanation you want. The letter A is the first word of the word with in French, avec. Right? The letter O is the only one that looks like a circle. You know, the letter I, as you said, is the only one that goes straight or looks like a road or whatever you want to say. You know, it could go on and on. You could define these any way you want. The point is that nobody stops to think, you know, very tiny percentage of people, and I've done this with thousands of people, very tiny percentage will say all of them. And if I was doing a normal training with you, like I normally do, going through a process, I would actually bring you through a series of 3 or 4 different exercises in which, again and again, even though you know I've said you're going to do it, you'll still do it. You will still want to choose an answer where the answer should be all of them. Because you're human. And human beings want to be certain. Even though certainty doesn't exist. Right? And good Lord, in an organization, you want certainty even more, don't you? I mean, in your job, whether you're a leader or whether you're part of a team, you want certainty more than you even do in your personal life, probably, right? Because you're worried that being uncertain makes you look bad, right? If you're leading a team, you can't be uncertain, can you? If you're in a team and you've been given an assignment, you can't be uncertain, can you? How many people here feel comfortable telling their people that they're leading, or telling people in their team, or telling their leader of their team, I'm really just not certain? There's a type yes in the chat for you. Type yes in the chat if that is totally cool with you. Going to work and be like, I'm not certain. Okay, that's 2 people so far. There's our 2 geniuses. Okay, 3. Oh, fantastic, Brandon. So those of you who say yes, you're on the right track, right? Leadership in the 21st century is not about being certain. It used to be. It isn't anymore, right? Leadership in the 21st century is about authenticity. That's right, Geraldine Perfect, being real. And creativity is ultimately about authenticity, because we are born creative. There's nothing for me to teach you. There's only stuff for me to help you get rid of that you put there, right? And being inauthentic, trying to be certain where there's no certainty available, is one of the biggest blocks you can do. Now, could you please, Colleen, put up that slide that you had up, the creativity test?
Yeah, I just have to open it again. Just give me a second, Michael. I'll do it
Sure.
now.
While I'm doing that, how many of you did the creativity test that Colleen sent out? Veronica did. Lee did. Luana did. Now, of those of you who did it, who would be interested to have your creativity test read on this call? Okay, Kelly. Is Kelly able to share a screen? That might be better, actually, than mine.
Yeah, I can. Let me just open it. Sorry.
Okay. Let's see if Kelly can share a screen. Is that Kelly's or mine? That's mine. Okay.
I think I'll have to stop presenting then, Michael.
Well, if Kelly's going to share, it's fine for now. You can take over again, right? It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you believe it's been 90 minutes already?
I'm flying having fun.
Yeah, but when I open it here, it's sorry. It's just this, so I'm not too sure if I was supposed to save it. So I think.
That's okay. Thank you for being brave to share it with us. But I want to show you guys. There is a link for the test, and if you didn't get that before, I'll talk to Colleen after this, and we'll send it out to the whole list. Yeah, as well as a couple other things.
I can put it in the chat box as well.
Okay, but don't do the test now if you haven't done it. It'll get very confused for you.
Yeah, I can't seem to open it, so maybe someone else should share there. Sorry.
Okay. Did anybody else want to get theirs read? I mean, I can just do a theoretical one showing you, but I'd love to show you a real one. Okay, Lee, go ahead.
Can you see?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Go back to question marks. Question marks are more fun. Okay, fantastic. This is great. Okay, so first of all, Lee, you got pretty much just above average on your numerical score, right?
Yeah.
And everybody can see this. So you'll notice, guys, that that dotted line is the average, okay? So one thing you'll notice is that Lee's score is pretty close to average all around. She does not have an extreme bias one way or the other. So that's the first thing to notice. Second thing to notice, and I'm saying this to anyone here who's done the test, it doesn't really matter what your numerical score is. If you go through my training process, you know, most people that have done it either as part of a team or individually will go up a significant amount in their numerical score, but that's not what's that important. And the higher your score, the harder it is to go up, right? Just mathematically, it's harder. If your score is 90, it's hard to get higher because there's only 100. If you're average, it's easy to go up. So that's good. What's really important, though, is to look at the breakdown here of the 8 different factors. And this is where I want to go through them quite quickly, but to show you when you ask what is creativity, and some of you say this and that, thinking out of the box or not, one of the important things about creativity is this definition done by these people that run this creativity test. These are the 8 factors that they measure, right? And this test works really well. I've used this test on dozens and dozens and dozens of people and trained them and had them come out the other end having increased certain factors and so on. So if you go around this thing, you'll notice that there are the 8 factors. One is abstraction. And now you notice that Lee's a little bit above average there, right? Abstraction is basically the ability to process data that isn't tangible, right? To be able to deal with ideas. Connection is the ability to connect ideas that don't seem to fit together. Perspective is the ability to take different perspectives. So to shift your perspective, again, what I said earlier, not to be stuck in the boxes you already have, right? But to change the boxes. Curiosity, as I've already said, curiosity is the ability to continue looking for answers when you already have one. Okay, boldness, really just the ability to take action, right, without worrying about being afraid or concerned about what others think. Paradox, the ability to hold ideas that don't go together at the same time. Complexity, basically very much what it says, the ability to deal with complex thinking and ideas that are more complicated. And persistence, just what it says, right? The ability to keep trying even when something's not working. Now you'll notice if you're carefully looking at this that there are 2 different kinds of things here, right? One is more of a skill, like abstraction is a thinking skill, right? The ability to think abstractly is something you can learn, right, Lee?
Yeah.
Right? The ability to take different perspectives, you can learn that. You may have gone through trainings where you learned that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Then there are things like boldness, persistence, and curiosity. Now, of course, you can still learn those things, but what I mean by that is they're not skills as much as they are attitudes, right? Boldness is something that it's a perspective or attitude or a way of looking at things, right? You can't learn to have the ability to hold things that are paradoxical at the same time instantly, right? It will take you practice. To be better at abstract thinking will take you practice. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But to be more bold, you can actually transform that in an instant. To be more persistent, to be more curious, those are all decisions you make in an instant. When you change the boxes in your mind, Lee, that say, I'm only averagely bold. Now you're a little bit above average on this test, but do you consider yourself extremely bold or kind of okay?
Yeah, okay. Just, yeah, pretty much like it says, slightly above average.
Now, do you see that if you just immediately said, you know what, I'm going to be bold now?
Hmm.
Do you see that you could do that right away?
Yes, yeah, it's a decision.
Yeah, it really is, right? And immediately, I'm going to guess immediately, if you say those words right now, say, I'm now going to be bold.
I'm now going to be bold.
What's the first emotion you feel?
Bold.
What's the second emotion you feel?
A little bit of like, ooh, can I be?
Okay. Would you call that a light fear?
Yeah, a bit of fear, yeah.
Okay. And the third emotion underneath them both?
Like, sure.
Would it be a little bit of excitement?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Something like, okay, I can do this. I'm ready for this.
Yeah. So you have a lot of conversations about it, right?
Mm.
First conversation is actually stating it. The second conversation is kind of like, okay, you said it, now you're feeling it, right? I said, I'm going to be bold. Ooh, I feel bold.
Yeah.
Now that I feel bold, next conversation, oh, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Other conversation, no, it's not. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Who's having all those conversations?
Me.
Yeah. So everybody on this call has a set of boxes in their head. That set of boxes provides a set of conversations. That set of conversations provides your personality.
Mm. Okay.
Creativity is the ability to be different, to think different from yourself. And innovation is simply creativity in action. That's all it is. So if you want to be more innovatively, you want to be more innovative than you are, start thinking differently than you do.
Okay.
Even if you already think creatively, start thinking differently anyway. Now, the easiest way to do that, when you break it down and look at this, right, the easiest way to do that, be more bold, be more curious, be more persistent. They're not skills. They're just attitudes, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And the complication you have of all those conversations, that's just your conversations.
That's good.
So when we talk about how do you become more creative for yourself, the first thing is, just do. Just do. Here's the factors right here. Now, are these all the factors? Is this the truth? No. Does this test work? It does. And are these factors chosen for a good reason? Yes. Now, being better at abstract thinking, being better at connecting disparate ideas and all that stuff takes more work, right? It takes practice. Boldness does not necessarily. It does for most of us because we're not used to it, but it doesn't really. Being more curious, you're already above average a little bit on boldness and curiosity. There's a lot of similarity between those two, right? Because curiosity is simply the willingness to go farther than just have one answer. So you're a little bit less satisfied than the average person with getting the right answer, according to this. It's a 20-minute test. It's not like,
Yeah.
But does this seem accurate to you? You're kind of average creatively.
Yeah,
but
no.
a little bit above average.
Yeah.
Now, I promise you, if you practice, starting with practicing being more curious, starting with practicing giving up that uncertainty is bad, right? But actually embrace it. Like, be uncertain. Because curiosity can't exist with certainty, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys all see that? What do I mean by that? Curiosity and certainty cannot live together. If you're certain, you're not curious.
You're questioning.
Well, you're not, right? If you're certain.
No, sorry. If you're curious, you're questioning.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you're curious, you got all this going on behind you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We all want to be more curious, don't we? We all want to be more creative, but if I said we want to be more uncertain, everybody goes, no, right? Except two people, I think. Everybody else like, no, I don't want to be more uncertain. It's so uncertain today. I want to be less uncertain. No, you want to be more uncertain. You want to be more curious. You want to take more risks. I mean, take stupid risks. I don't mean to run out in the street in front of traffic and see what happens, right? But take more risks with your thinking to start with. So here's my offer. Anybody that wants a private reading of their creativity test, whether you've done it or not yet, the first 10 people who connect with me on LinkedIn, if you've done the final survey at the end of this thing, I will give you free reading of your creativity test, if you want one. Okay, thank you, Lynn, Lee, sorry, for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
We're in the home stretch. I want to take you through an understanding of how important your own mind is, not only in your own creativity, but in the creativity around you of your teams and the work that you do. Okay. So let's go back. Colleen, you're a star, just where I was going. Let's go back to where we were with the creativity test, the next slide after that. After all this.
I'm getting there.
And I want to talk a little bit while Colleen's doing this. I didn't bring it up yet, but why design thinking sucks. Design thinking is great. It works really well. It's used around the world. Lots of people get lots of great results with it. Next slide, Colleen. Lots of people get lots of great results with it, but it does not teach people to be more creative in the team. It simply gets results. And it teaches people how to model a creative process, but it doesn't retrain their thinking. That thing I showed you, that 3-step process, is the process that you need to regain. You need to get your conscious and subconscious minds to reconnect in a way that it hasn't before. Now, I want to really quickly touch on the idea of inspiration, because again, we understand inspiration wrongly, right? The idea of creativity didn't even exist historically. This is what Plato said about creativity. The painter just imitates. There was no such thing as creativity. The Renaissance came around and creativity became more accepted. Colleen, next slide. Okay, now after the Renaissance, Jack London said this quote. This was a quote I learned when I was in my teens. I love this quote. Can't wait for inspiration to happen. You have to go out after it with a club. And here's another great quote from another guy from around the same period, also an American writer. I only write when I'm inspired. Fortunately, I'm inspired every morning at 9 a.m. So both these quotes make it clear that inspiration is something that comes from inside of us, right? But the funny thing is that throughout the Renaissance and most of the 20th century, most people thought that inspiration came from God, only from God. But when we talk about inspiration, there's a funny thing, and it ties back into everything that we've been talking about. Please type in the chat what inspires you most. Whether to be creative or just to feel good about life. What inspires you most? Just type that in the chat. Next slide, Colleen. Oh. I think I didn't give you the other ones. You can close this for now. So it's important you guys type this in the chat. What inspires you most? And I want to go through a few points really, really quickly about inspiration. And while I'm doing that, I want to also encourage you to breathe carefully. Breathe in and breathe out carefully, consciously. Start to bring consciousness into your breathing. Remember what I said, the connection between the conscious and subconscious is what is going to change your creativity, right? Specifically make it more powerful by being more conscious in your conscious and less conscious in your subconscious. So keep typing in the chat what it is that inspires you. And at the same time, I want you to think about breathing in and out. Just breathing in and out, right? Now, here's why I'm asking you to do this. And there's a very specific reason. So, first thing I want you to get about inspiration is this. You're doing it right now, right? Inspiration is breathing. That's all it is. It's literally what the word means, right? And you know that. Inspiration means to breathe in. Now, here's the part that you don't probably get. Creation is breathing out, right? Inspiration, breathing in. Creation, breathing out. So, breathing in and out, you are literally, right? Creating. Breathe in, you breathe out. So, inspiration happens simply by breathing in. Second thing you want to realize is that inspiration is automatic and necessary. The world record for holding the breath, 24 minutes by a free diver, 24 minutes. I can't do that. You probably can't do that. But the record for holding your breath is that long. Most people, 2 or 3 minutes. Point is, if you hold your breath too long, you will faint. Your body will collapse and force you to breathe. You can't help but breathe in. If you try not to breathe in, eventually your body will force you to. When you breathe in, you have to breathe out. So inspiration automatically creates. If you breathe in, you have to breathe out. You have to breathe in. You have to breathe out. Inspiration is simple. It also feels great. Why? Because we're getting rid of the crap in our bodies. You know, Hemingway famously said that the first draft of everything is bleep. Creativity is not expected to be good. When you talk about failing forward, it's perfect because creativity is designed to be mostly not good. It has no relationship to being judged, even though we're in boxes and want to judge everything. The bottom line is, it's just getting it out. Breathe in, breathe out, right? It's a cycle. We breathe stuff in, we breathe it out, and most of it's the same. It's almost the same levels of oxygen and nitrogen and we breathe in and out. It's just the carbon monoxide that's much different. Mostly it's the same. That's why people can continue breathing in a closed space for a while. It's a cycle. The more inspired you are, the more you'll create. The more you create, the more inspired you become. And that's why it's a collaboration, right? It's neither outside nor inside us. It's a collaboration between the inside and the outside. Why am I talking about this and why is this important? I want you to look at the list in the chat of the things that people have said inspire them. Right? And you'll start to notice something. All of the things on the list of what inspires people are things outside of those people. It inspires some people to be, you know, family inspires them. Stories of success inspire people, being, you know, what people are thinking. Now, one person wrote being satisfied in life. It's the only person that said that what they're experiencing is what inspires them. It's almost entirely true this way, that what other people are doing or what's happening around us or being at a beach, you know, those things are what mostly inspire people the most. And even for yourself, if you're one of the people that wrote down that there's something internal inspiring you, you'll notice that most of the things on your personal list will still be external to you. And here's the thing. Those external things only inspire you because of who you are inside, right? Like if you look at that list, other people's things might not inspire you at all, right? Like somebody might be inspired by family, you might not be. I'm inspired by walking on the beach. Someone else might find that boring, and, you know. What's inside you, what inspires you, is coming from outside only in your perception. Ultimately, it's all inside you. Right? Ultimately, we are inspired by ourselves. And the people that, the two people, whatever, that wrote down that what inspires them is their own self or their own thoughts, that's the real accuracy here. You could actually choose to be inspired by anything. You can actually choose to be inspired by whatever you want to be. And this is a similar conversation that we just had around that creativity test, right? That the thing that is an attitude, that is a way of looking at the world, is something you can actually choose to shift immediately. Now, if you're working in a business, you're working in a team, getting the other people around you to shift is a lot more difficult than getting yourself to shift. Getting a team to work in sync is a whole different conversation. But it has to start with the individual. No team will ever become more innovative until the people in the team innovate themselves. And that's ultimately the message that I want you to go away with today. That simplicity is this. Lee and everybody else, the most important innovation you will ever make is to innovate yourself. No matter who you are, no matter what you love about yourself, no matter how great you are, no matter how innovative you already are, the most important innovation will always start with you. Then you can spread out to your team. And that innovation will always start with you being willing to be uncertain. Not to be indecisive, right? Not to be confused, just to be uncertain as a practice. Willing to be uncertain. Excited to be uncertain. And most of all, actually learning how to use uncertainty as the source of what you're doing instead of trying to avoid it. Is that making sense to you? Type yes in the chat if you get what I mean. While we do that, Colleen, could you put up the slides again? And please type no in the chat if you don't understand what I mean or you disagree with me, because I don't want you to go away today in 10 minutes from now and not get that. We spent 2 hours together. Almost all of you have been here the whole time. And I could have gone a lot faster and covered many, many, many things, but I want to really just go through this idea of uncertainty being the most useful tool you can possibly have. And you simply need to start making the choice to be uncertain as a positive choice, and also start to practice that comfort with it. Colleen, go back to the right to the end-ish. There's two things I want to just show. So we've talked about uncertainty. We've talked about inspiration, right? We've talked about thinking into the box instead of out of the box. We've talked about curiosity as well. And you'll see in all of these things that what you wanted to get out of today is not what you got. Right? And that's one of the important things. This is just a quote that I love about that inspiration stuff. And I hope you're still breathing consciously, because I want you to go through your day breathing consciously. There is really no difference between outside and inside, right? Genius is 99% perspiration, only a tiny bit of inspiration. You don't need to be inspired to get the job done. And finally, Picasso, inspiration does exist, but you only find it once you start, is basically what he's saying. Why does Picasso get 2 quotes? I don't know. Next slide. Okay, stop there. So this is the way that my training works. And whether or not I ever work with you, I want you to get the process here, how it's different than design thinking and how you can use it. Right? We start by building a safe space for your conscious and subconscious to begin to work together. Okay. We then look at identity. It's the critical part, and this is what I want you to go from today with, is that who you see yourself as, who you want to be, how you see yourself, all this stuff, the boxes in your head, that is what will influence and impact your creative thinking more than anything else. And that's why I say the most important innovation is always yourself first. And before you can innovate your teams, you need to address yourself, and you need to address every individual in a team. No system is going to work without the individuals in the system working. Vision, you'll notice, is after on this pyramid. Vision is after possibility. Vision is after you get to the point of having lots of ideas. Lots of people want to start with a vision. It's impossible. You need to actually have the ideas before you have the vision. Right? You need to actually let yourself play with lots of ideas before you limit them, make decisions. And then finally, what we work on is the idea of connecting your ideas in all directions. But the important thing here that I want you to take away for today is safety. You need to start to create a safe place to play, a safe place to let your conscious and subconscious minds start to interact and work with each other. Because you, like all of us, are almost certainly someone who has not let your subconscious be free enough. That's the biggest difference between us and little kids. Think about this. You have either dominated your subconscious and made it shut up, or insulted and abused it and told it how bad it is. Which of those two apply to you more? You don't even have to share that. Very, very few people, very few, have done the kind of work necessary to bring the subconscious up to the point where it's actually a full, equal participant partner in this process. So, Colleen, next slide. Okay. Oh, no, the other one. Yep, that one. Okay. I have a huge favor to ask. All right. Please do this survey. It is much different than the first one. First one was just designed for fun to see what people wanted out of this session, mostly to show you that you would want things that actually are contrary to your creativity. This survey here is designed to help me understand what worked for you, what doesn't work, what I could improve, and so forth. And I would really, really appreciate, your feedback there. So much so that if you fill this out, there's 3 different ebooks that you're welcome to have that you can choose from, and you can have all of them. If you fill this out, I'll send you those personally. And also, like I said, I'm willing to do private readings on the creativity tests for 10 people that fill this out, that want them. Now, there's still like 5 minutes or however long people are going to stay here. Does anybody have questions, comments, anything you would like to ask or say? Because I am complete. Dash, thank you. Please do the survey if you can. I'm sure Colleen will also send it out to people that do afterwards if they need to, but it's like 3 minutes to do this. Does anybody have any questions, comments, needs, inquiries, anything? Colleen?
No, all good, Michael. Thank you so much for a brilliant session. And just a reminder to everybody that the recording will be on the Business Engage YouTube channel. Michael, thank you so much. It was really a great session. I'm sure everybody from the chat and the interaction you've had, everybody thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Everybody, the next event is on the 13th of July, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day. Thanks so much for being with us today. Thank you again, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Nice one. Thank you. Bye.